morning and a warm welcome to Daybreak. I'm your host Katie Wilson, here to take you through the top stories. Let's see today's headlines. President Trump announced a brief pause in the Strait of Hormuz escort mission following progress in Iran talks. Russian strikes killed at least 27 people in Ukraine just days before Moscow's planned two-day ceasefire. And Israeli strikes killed at least 3 people and wounded 9 others in Gaza despite a ceasefire. Thanks for joining us this morning. To our top story, and the United States and Iran are once again at the centre of heightened tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial global shipping lane. As diplomatic efforts, military warnings and fresh maritime incidents raise concerns over the stability of the region.
The Donald Trump administration has announced a temporary halt to its naval operation, helping ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz, a vital route for global oil shipments. President Trump said the mission, known as Project Freedom, would be suspended for a short period after what he called strong progress in negotiations with Iran. He added the move followed a request from Pakistan, which has been acting as an intermediary. Despite the pause, U.S. restrictions targeting Iranian ports will remain in place. He also said on Tuesday that Iran's military strength has been heavily weakened and claimed Tehran should surrender, adding that it is too proud to admit it.
They should wave. They're very proud. Maybe you won't see a white flag, but essentially that's already what they are. They should wave the white flag of surrender. In hockey, they say uncle, right? When are they gonna cry uncle? But and they have another expression. If this were a fight, they would stop it.
At the same time, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington favors a diplomatic solution, noting that the administration is aiming for a deal rather than further escalation. Meanwhile, Iran has responded with criticism. Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Ghalibaf said the current situation is intolerable for America, while we are only at the beginning. Iran also accused the U.S. and its allies of putting maritime security and energy transit at risk through what he described as ceasefire violations and a continued blockade. As the situation remains tense in the Strait of Hormuz, fears of further disruption to shipping continuing to weigh on global energy markets and oil fluctuation prices. All right, let's take a look at the stories shaping the day across the globe, around the world. Now, we're going to begin with CNN, who of course are leading on that story in the Middle East, with the US to pause Project Freedom, the effort aimed at guiding commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. So they're leading with a live page on that. They're leading also with Marco Rubio's speech, as the announcement came just hours before the Secretary of State said the initial US-Israeli offensive in Iran was over after achieving its objectives, and the focus would now be on Project Freedom, which has been paused. So interesting there what is going on. Meanwhile, Iran's top diplomat is in Beijing for talks on regional and international development with his Chinese counterpart. Now, this comes as Trump is also preparing to travel to China next week. So all the updates there in terms of the status of the war, the Iranian foreign minister, and of course the economic impact here, as demand for oil is falling and global oil stockpiles have also seen their sharpest decline since COVID. So plenty of updates there on CNN if you'd like to follow that across the day. Well, we're going to head over now to Al Jazeera, which has the latest on the war in Ukraine. At least 26 people have been killed and more than 80 others injured in Russian drone and missile attacks on Ukraine just hours before Kyiv's ceasefire is set to kick in. This has come 3 days before Moscow's planned pause in fighting to mark Victory Day celebrations. So that's the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. And we've been hearing from Zelensky, and Zelensky said that
Russian authorities showed utter cynicism by announcing a ceasefire and then launching missile and drone attacks across the country. So latest developments there, we see some pictures there on Al Jazeera, and we're also hearing Ukrainian drones attacked one of Russia's biggest oil refineries, sparking a fire in the industrial area of the Russian town of Kirishi. So plenty of developments there from Russia and Ukraine, so you can stay across that on Al Jazeera. But we're going to go to an interesting piece now in The Guardian. It's an interesting opinion piece, and it's focusing on that diplomatic spat between Germany and the US. Now, this all started when Friedrich Merz, Germany's chancellor, said the US is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership. And obviously, we remember that comment. We remember that it sparked outrage from Trump, and ever since, Merz has replaced Pope Leo, let's say, as his favourite target of those late night truth social media rants. And what began as a bit of a spat between Friedrich Merz and Donald Trump over the Iran war is now rapidly turning into a historic rupture in relations between Germany and the US. So 5,000 US troops are to be withdrawn from German bases, and in the dispute, despite all of this, what this article is saying, obviously, why is Friedrich Merz promoting this? Well, because he set out on the night of his party's election victory to make Europe more independent from the US security umbrella. So the reason why Friedrich Merz is deciding to risk Donald Trump's wrath, according to this article, is exactly that. So it's a really interesting insight there into the German Chancellor, his policies, and a really interesting read there in The Guardian if you'd be interested in finding out more. Now, we're going to head over to the BBC, who again has another interesting piece from their Seoul bureau. So this is focused on North Korea and the daughter of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. So it's dressed for succession. What Kim Ju-e's outfit tells us about North Korea. Now, this is the Supreme Leader's 13-year-old daughter, who we're seeing more and more often now in pictures released from state media. And South Korea's spy agency believes that Kim Jong-un has chosen her as his successor. And now what analysts in the BBC Seoul bureau has noticed is how her outfits are starting to reflect that. So we're seeing more elaborate hairstyles, formal suits and skirts, and even sometimes matching her father. If we scroll down a bit more, we'll see they're in matching leather jackets, and we're even seeing her, there we go, matching leather jackets. There we have it. So very interesting there. There's even fur and Christian Dior leather jackets, of course, totally unattainable for the average North Korean. And this article is going into what this tells us. What can we read into this? And they think this is a way of masking her youth. She's only 13 years old and projecting a more mature image of a future leader. But equally, it sets her apart from everyone else and the general population. These are outfits that lawmakers in North Korea have deemed anti-socialist for the rest of the population. So it's definitely an interesting insight there into not only the North Korean leadership or the future leadership, but equally insight into life into North Korea and the restrictions that everyday North Koreans face on things like clothing. So finally, of course, we're going to head over to sport and get the latest sports news from ESPN as the last of the Champions League semi-finals kicks off tonight at 11 p.m. Baku time. So who will join Arsenal in the final in Budapest? Will it be Paris Saint-Germain or will it be Bayern? Arsenal won their place in the final yesterday after beating Atletico Madrid at the Emirates yesterday. And now with the aggregate between PSG and Bayern currently at 4 to Bayern and 5 to PSG. Remember, Bayern are at home this time. This could be one of the best Champions League games we've seen in a long time. Last week's match was the highest scoring European Cup semi-final in over 60 years. So this is set to be very interesting. So let us know who you're supporting on all of our social media channels. Let us know in our social media comment. Are you back in Bayern? Are you back in PSG? Who would you like to see in Budapest? Now, that rounds up our press roundup for this morning. Now, we're going to go to a short break, but when I return, we'll discuss the rest of the global stories. Stay with us.
las aerolíneas acá en Argentina. Y empieza por plata y es para los gobiernos. Un tipo muy piola.
No, money from Armenia, from Russia. A group of Russian Armenians.
People who are financial days.
Some rich Armenians, they live in Russia.
Pashinyan lo puso preso. Pashinyan is not protecting Nagorno-Karabakh.
The Armenian game is Russia.
No con Pashinyan mismo, pero...
Que remuevan a Pashinyan.
unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenging.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gaza. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, Port Ainu.
Welcome back, you're watching Daybreak. Now, let's have a look at the global stories. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called a new UN Security Council draft resolution on the Strait of Hormuz a test of the UN's ability to respond to global crises on Tuesday. The US-backed text demands that Iran stop attacks and mining in the key waterway after a previous resolution was vetoed by China and Russia.
I think it's a real test for the UN. Right? As a function, as something that functions that can solve global problems. What is the purpose of the UN? The UN was supposed to be a place where you could peacefully resolve global conflict. Right now you have a country who is unlawfully, criminally, and illegally taking possession of an international waterway and blowing up commercial vessels and putting mines in the water. I don't know if people appreciate like how outrageous this is, how unacceptable it is that any country would fire and try to sink commercial vessels or put mines in the water. Both of these things are illegal. And so we're going to take it to the UN, and we're going to give it another chance to be a forum in which we're not even asking people to like commit troops to the region and help blow up the Iranian boats. All we're asking them to do is to condemn it, to call on Iran to stop blowing ships, to remove these mines, and to allow humanitarian relief to come through, because there's humanitarian aid that's trapped. That's it.
Pope Leo said on Tuesday he wants to focus on promoting peace in the Christian message, whilst accepting that people are free to criticise him. His comments come after President Trump accused him of supporting allowing Iran to have nuclear weapons. Pope Leo rejected that claim, stressing he has never supported nuclear arms and reaffirming the Church's position that they are morally unacceptable.
Self-defense has traditionally always been allowed by the Church. So to talk about just war today, it's a very complex problem, and we have to analyze it on many levels. But ever since the entrance into the nuclear age, the whole concept of war has to be reevaluated in terms today. And I always believe that it's much better to enter into dialogue than to look for arms and to support the arms industry, which gains billions and billions of dollars each year, instead of sitting down at the table, solving our problems, and using money to solve humanitarian issues, hunger in the world, etc. Thank you very much.
Gaza's death toll has passed 72,000 according to local health authorities. The latest strike killed 3 people, including a teenage boy.
Tensions remain high in the Middle East as Israel continues its operations in Gaza. The Palestinian death toll has now reached 72,615, according to health authorities in the territory. More than 172,000 people have been injured since the conflict between Hamas and Israel began on October the 7th, 2023. Officials say at least 3 people were killed and 9 others wounded in the past 24 hours. Among the latest incidents was an Israeli strike on a police station in Gaza City on May 5th, where a 15-year-old boy was killed and several others were injured.
He sells bread to feed his siblings. He has 15 people to feed. Nobody feels for us. If we go hungry, if we die, if we are killed, nobody feels. What did this child do to deserve being hit while selling bread?
We suddenly heard a blast. I ran outside and found the police station had been hit. I looked and saw people lying on the ground, martyrs and wounded. I started moving and putting them in the car. We came here with a martyr. When will the war stop?
Earlier the same day, other Israeli strikes killed at least 2 more Palestinians, according to local health officials. There has been no immediate comment from Israel on the incidents. Israel has intensified strikes on Gaza's police force, saying it is used by Hamas to maintain control. Violence has continued almost daily despite the ceasefire, with both sides accusing each other of violations. According to Gaza's health authorities, more than 800 Palestinians have been killed and over 2,300 injured since the truce took effect in October 2025.
An Israeli court has extended the detention of 2 activists arrested aboard a Gaza-bound flotilla by 6 days. Saif Abu Keshek and Tiago Avila were detained last week and will remain in custody until the end of the week. They were part of a flotilla that set sail from Barcelona, aiming to deliver aid to Gaza and challenge Israel's blockade. Israeli authorities accuse them of links to a terrorist organisation, a claim their lawyer rejects. Israel denies allegations of mistreatment, and the court has ordered medical monitoring following reported hunger strikes.
We made it clear before the court today that first of all, we are talking about an illegal detention that must end now, and that they both must be released immediately and without any conditions, especially that we are talking about 2 foreign nationals that were arrested in international waters approximately 1,000 kilometers away from Gaza and brought into Israel against their will.
Hezbollah says it launched a drone strike on Israeli troops in southern Lebanon as clashes with Israel continue despite a ceasefire. Lebanese authorities say Israeli strikes killed 2 people in Deir Kifa, while Israel says its forces remain in the south for security. The violence follows weeks of escalation since early March, with more than 2,600 people reported killed in Israeli attacks. That's according to Lebanon's health ministry. In Washington, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio addressed prospects for ending the fighting.
There's no problem between the Lebanese government and the Israeli government. Israel doesn't claim any land in Lebanon belongs to them. And by and large, I think a peace deal between Lebanon and Israel is imminently achievable and should be. The problem with Israel and Lebanon is not Israel or Lebanon, it's Hezbollah.
Let's get some other news now. And Russian strikes have killed at least 27 people in Ukraine just days before Moscow's planned 2-day ceasefire. Officials have said, raising doubts over whether the pause will hold.
Ukrainian officials say Russian attacks have killed dozens of people across multiple regions, hours before a proposed ceasefire was due to begin. The heaviest strike was reported in Zaporizhia, where authorities say aerial bombs and drones killed at least 12 people and injured around 20, damaging residential areas and sparking fires.
There was a cynical strike on facilities in the city of Zaporizhia with 4 guided aerial bombs. The enemy intentionally began attacking those locations with Shahed drones. For a very long time, emergency services and municipal services were unable to approach the location.
In Kramatorsk, officials say 5 people were killed and 12 injured, while in Dnipro, authorities reported between 3 and 4 deaths, with several others wounded. In the Poltava region, a strike on gas production facilities reportedly killed 4 people. Separately, officials in the northern Chernihiv region say a drone strike hit the city centre, injuring 3 people and setting an administrative building and nearby vehicles on fire. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has criticized the limited pause, saying it is not enough to halt attacks for only a short period. Russia has not commented on the latest Ukrainian claims. Meanwhile, Russian state media reported that a Ukrainian drone strike killed 2 people in the Chuvashia region. Ukraine has proposed an open-ended ceasefire starting at midnight, urging Russia to reciprocate. Moscow has announced a separate truce for May 8th and 9th, linked to World War II commemorations.
Thousands have filled Prague's Old Town Square on Tuesday, waving flags and holding signs reading "Hands off the media." It's a protest against government plans to change how public media is funded. The government plans to phase out licence fees this year and fund public broadcasters through the state budget from next year. Critics say the move would cut funding and increase political pressure on public media. Prime Minister Andrej Babis says independence will be preserved with governance unchanged and budgets adjusted for inflation. The US military says 3 people were killed in a strike on a vessel in the Eastern Pacific. US Southern Command says the boat was traveling along known drug trafficking routes and was involved in narcotics operations. The strike is part of a wider campaign with at least 22 people reported killed in similar operations since April. Passengers infected with hantavirus have been evacuated by a boat from a cruise ship docked at Praia Port in Cape Verde. Health officials say 3 infected passengers are expected to be flown out for treatment. Hantavirus is a rare but serious infection that can cause severe respiratory illness. The ship remains at port as authorities respond to the situation. The cruise operator has not commented on how the passengers may have been infected or whether further cases have been identified. Chad's army says at least 23 security personnel have been killed and 26 others injured in an overnight attack on a military base in the Lake Chad region. It's a long-running hotspot for armed violence in Central Africa. The army says it repelled the assault and has launched operations to secure the area. Authorities say the attack was carried out by Boko Haram militants who have operated across the Lake Chad basin for more than a decade. President Mohamed Idris Deby condemned the assault, describing it as a serious threat to national security. Sudan's armed forces says a drone attack targeting Khartoum airport was carried out with involvement from the United Arab Emirates and Ethiopia. The accusation follows a series of strikes in recent days that have disrupted months of relative calm in the capital, 3 years into Sudan's civil war. Military officials say the latest attack was part of a broader pattern linking earlier drone launches to Ethiopia's Bahir Dar airport and alleging connections to the UAE.
Data from the drone was analysed, and we asked the manufacturer, and they said what follows. The drone, number S88, owned by the UAE and was used from within Ethiopian territory, Bahir Dar Airport. What Ethiopia and the UAE have done is direct aggression against Sudan and won't be met with silence. Our armed forces are fully prepared to deal with any threat in a way that preserves the dignity, sovereignty, and security of the nation.
Over 100 Nigerians in South Africa have requested repatriation following anti-foreigner protests, as concerns grow over rising tensions and reported violence targeting migrants.
At least 130 Nigerian citizens in South Africa have requested to be flown home following protests targeting foreign nationals. Officials say the applicants are the first to come forward under a new Nigerian government-assisted repatriation scheme, amid concerns that tensions could escalate.
Those that don't have the resources to get their flight tickets to move back to Nigeria, that means government have to go in. And for government to go in, definitely there must be the provision of funds, either to procure tickets for them or you get an aircraft that will convey them back to Nigeria.
Demonstrations were held in Pretoria and Johannesburg last week, with protesters calling for stricter action on illegal immigration, arguing that undocumented migrants are placing pressure on jobs, security and public services.
I feel that if there's a sanction probably on the investment that applicants South Africa have in Nigeria, they feel that heavy weight. I feel that that would have been more productive, and and to counter a lot of things, because they'll give back to their government that this Nigerian government, they are not taking it easier, they are fighting for their people. So I just feel that talking is a step, but I feel that sanctions will do much better.
Migrant rights groups, however, say foreign nationals are often blamed for broader economic challenges.
Clearly unacceptable to generalize, stereotype Nigerians in particular, and then other African nationals in general, of being drug barons, of being kidnappers, of being armed robbers, of being ringleaders. This is absolutely unacceptable. It is stereotyping, and we condemn with the highest form of condemnation.
Nigeria has condemned the violence, including reports that 2 of its citizens were killed after allegedly being assaulted by security officials.
We're going to go to a quick break now, and when I return, we'll take a look at the regional headlines, and I'll be joined by a guest to dig further into some of the key stories. Stay with us.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Now let's go to the stories in the region. A fire at a shopping centre west of Tehran has killed at least 8 people on Tuesday. Iranian state TV said 36 others were injured in the blast. Officials said materials used on the building's facade helped spread the flames quickly. 7 rescue teams and search dogs were sent to the scene while the cause remains unknown. Pakistan's Navy says it responded to a distress call from an Indian vessel stranded in the Arabian Sea after a critical technical failure. The ship was carrying 7 crew members when it became disabled while travelling from Oman to India. According to a military statement, a Pakistani naval vessel was dispatched to assist, providing food, medical aid and technical support. Now, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan says a de facto peace now exists with Azerbaijan, pointing to a historic shift in shared rhetoric. Addressing EU chiefs in Yerevan, he stressed that unblocking regional borders is vital and added that the peace declaration signed in Washington last August is only the beginning.
Signing and ratifying a peace agreement does not mean the work is finished. On the contrary, the text of the agreement itself makes it clear that additional arrangements will be required afterward, including on sectoral cooperation. For example, in the transport sector, we are already cooperating today without any separate agreement. And of course, it is extremely important that we fully open roads for each other, including the opening of the border with Turkey. I have no doubt that this will happen. For the first time in our shared history, Armenia and Azerbaijan are using the same or very similar rhetoric. In particular, I have noticed that I myself very often speak in this way. We are learning to live in conditions of peace. Moreover, we are still trying to understand what peace is, what it represents, what its form and substance are.
Armenia hosted its first bilateral summit with the European Union yesterday, a landmark diplomatic moment for the country, who has formally declared its ambition to join the bloc and is cautiously loosening ties with its longtime ally, Russia. Joining us now to discuss this is political analyst Fouad Karimli. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, how significant of a diplomatic moment is this for Pashinyan?
Well, when we look at the significance of the event specifically, we see that a lot of the EU leaders, heads of states, visited Yerevan, and it's been one of the first times that a high-level summit like this has taken place. So when we look at it through the perspective of Armenia, it's a significant event, but for Pashinyan, it's even more significant. With the elections that are coming up, this is going to be a significant boost for his re-election campaign as well.
And talk to me more about those upcoming elections next month, because a lot of this is hinging on that result, isn't it?
Yeah, so the parliamentary elections, I think it's one of the biggest events that are waiting to be taken place, specifically in the South Caucasus, because when we look at Armenia, there's a significant opposition that's going against Pashinyan. They're using intense rhetoric of, reigniting the war, sending people back to Karabakh from Armenia. So a lot of these hateful and really not progressive comments that are taking place. And I think they use that kind of rhetoric and that kind of chosen trauma within the public to go against Pashinyan, which is really easy. But looking at what he's doing specifically about progressing the peace process, for him, at least, the EU heads of state is coming to Yerevan is kind of like a legitimacy test. Right, so the public itself sees that, our prime minister was able to host these kinds of people, heads of states in Yerevan, so it should probably be a boost for him. But the elections coming up do really show that it's a really trivial time for Armenia.
In regards to those elections, so the EU is set to deploy a civil security mission focused on hybrid rapid response and countering cyber attacks and disinformation ahead of those elections, alongside a €170 million resilience package. So how is that going down with the Kremlin?
Yeah, so cybersecurity was one of the biggest topics that were discussed. That kind of stood out from all of the others, especially because of the timing. Right, so this was announced just a few weeks before the elections are taking place, and there have been reports in the few months that have been preceding now that Russia, or at least some groups in Russia, have been trying to interfere in swaying voters in different directions, especially pushing for the opposition, pushing for separatist movements again, and reigniting that kind of hateful rhetoric within the society. So it does show that there is significant backing from the EU for Armenia in terms of cybersecurity, and we saw that Russia has stated unease, especially in light of these developments. So up until now, this summit isn't something that just took place in one day, right? There's been planning that's been going on for a long time. Russia's obviously been aware of this, and they've come out specifically, they're saying that, Armenia has received preferential treatment in terms of natural gas shipments, so much less prices than other countries, and that's kind of like a pressure mechanism that they're trying to turn on against Armenia right now. So Armenia really does have to walk this tightrope and see what's going to happen.
In the longer term, tell me more about that balancing act that Pashinyan's got to hold between the West and Russia.
In terms of the balancing act, we see that Pashinyan is taking concrete steps towards the West right now. So this in itself, although highly symbolic, so there aren't any binding agreements that took place, significantly binding agreements. This was a highly significant act in itself to host these European leaders in Yerevan just before the elections, right during the peace process. So it does show that Armenia, with the Pashinyan government, is taking significant steps towards the EU, but it doesn't mean that it's taking a break from Russia at this point, because it's not really feasible, right? There's Russian troops within Armenia, there's a military base. Armenia is still highly dependent on Russia for natural gas. So it is a really difficult rope for Pashinyan to walk, and we just have to wait and see how it's going to turn out.
And this summit took place alongside continued European engagement with Azerbaijan, including visits by Giorgia Meloni and Kaja Kallas to Baku. So what does that parallel outreach suggest about the EU's approach to the region?
Well, when we look at Azerbaijan's inclusion, at least in their itinerary, let's say, we see that the heads of state, especially Giorgia Meloni, she was here Italy and Azerbaijan have significant billions of dollars of trade turnover every year. And the European Union really does understand that all the rhetoric that they're talking about in terms of transport, in terms of connectivity in the South Caucasus, it cannot take place without Azerbaijan, right? So Armenia is a landlocked country. Georgia also is dependent on Azerbaijan for transit fees. Azerbaijan is what bridges the Europe with Asia, right? So Azerbaijan does carry that strategic significance for Europe, and they're well aware of this. They want to include us in the process, which is good, but hopefully they'll keep on pursuing or at least supporting us in the peace process that's going on right now, rather than sabotaging it.
And given the intensity of the diplomatic activity both in Yerevan and in Baku, and of course that upcoming election in Armenia, how sustainable is this momentum, and what are the things to be watching out for in the period ahead?
Well, first of all, when we talk about sustainability, Azerbaijan has always had that, multi-vectored foreign policy. So our balancing has always been very good. First of all, our strategy has been the national interest of Azerbaijan. What is in our national interest, right? In terms of Armenia, we see a lot of tilting back and forth, right? Their pivot has been very significantly Russian at some points in their history and very significantly pro-European. We see the same trajectory that's happened in other countries. We saw that happening in Georgia until very recently, when Georgian government decided that, now we have to look at the national interest of Georgia and, kind of make peace with where we're situated geographically. In terms of that, Armenia really does, if the elections do turn out in Pashinyan's favor, I think he can probably continue the sustainability. But like I said, this trip in itself, the summit, was a big event for him, a big event for Armenia. Maybe it will increase his legitimacy in the eyes of the public, especially after the war. But we just have to wait and see.
All eyes certainly on the elections then. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio and for your analysis.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, Istanbul is holding one of the largest defence and aerospace events in Europe as it hosts the Saha 26 exhibition. The event has seen thousands of companies taking part. So here's Nuray Mustafa with more details.
Organized by Saha Istanbul, the Saha 2026 exhibition has officially begun in Istanbul at the Istanbul Expo Center. More than 1,700 companies are taking part in the event. The exhibition is considered one of the largest defense and aerospace events in Turkey and Europe. It's being held under the slogan "Master Technology Shape the Future." As in previous year, the exhibition has attracted significant interest. The 2024 edition, participants from over 120 countries attended. More than 25,000 meetings were held and cooperation activities worth $6.2 billion were achieved. The official opening ceremony has already taken place. Speaking at the event, the chairman of the board of Saha 2026, Haluk Bayraktar, addressed the impact of global political tensions in the defense industry and technology. Within the framework of Saha 2026, official delegations and companies are coming together with meetings being held to establish new partnerships. The exhibition features drone demonstrations, technology presentations, and competitions. The World Drone Wars event, being held for the first time, has also drawn particular attention. Overall, more than 300 new products are expected to be showcased during the exhibition, alongside the signing of various agreements. Nuray Mustafa, Veshajiyev for A News, Istanbul, Turkey.
Well, let's get more, because at Saha 2026, Haluk Bayraktar highlighted Turkey's booming defence expo and its role in boosting defence exports. He warned that mass-produced, low-cost FPV drones and loitering munitions have become a strategic necessity in modern warfare, driving urgent domestic production.
The Saha 2026 exhibition has significantly expanded its scale, becoming Europe's largest industrial cluster with 1,700 participating companies and over 150,000 expected visitors. This growth propels the export volume of Turkey's defense and aerospace industry from $10 billion to a target of $13 billion, with a goal of signing at least $6 billion worth of export contracts solely during this exhibition. In line with the flexible adaptation to changing warfare concepts, Baykar, which supplies 65% of the global UAV market, has brought lower-cost, mobile and mass-produced FPV drones and loitering munitions to the forefront this year. The fact that 100,000 units are used per month in the Ukraine war proves that these systems have turned into a strategic necessity akin to ammunition production, and that it is impossible to meet such high quantities from external sources.
Well, Kazakhstan has been hosting GTEx AI 2026, the region's largest technology and startup event. Most of the companies taking part are entering the Kazakh market for the first time, as Almaty becomes a new meeting point for global tech players. International companies, investors and startups are there to present their solutions and to look at the region's potential as a growing technology hub. Our correspondent reports from Almaty.
At the Atakent Exhibition Center, the first ever GTEx AI Kazakhstan is now in its second day. More than 300 companies from 60 countries are here, showing technologies that until recently sounded like science fiction. They range from advanced AI systems to solutions already used in real industries. Investment talks, product launches and startups competing for attention and funding are all happening here. What really stands out is that around 85% of the companies are in Kazakhstan for the first time. For many of them, this is not just a presentation, it's a first look at the market and a chance to understand how the region works and what opportunities it offers. One of the solutions on display focuses on workplace safety.
What we are seeing here is one of the product. It's called Smart Eye. We can, deploy this product across any, installed cameras in any construction company or industries. This is an industry agnostic solution. So what we do here is we develop a lot of use cases, especially on the HSE use cases. And you can see here, if in the live video, see for example, now I'm wearing a live vest and it is detecting. You can see a green indication there. So likewise, if I wear a helmet, gloves, it will detect. The same way in the real world, we have a lot of use cases developed. You can, as a HSE perspective, we can monitor the complete compliance, the PPE, as well as we also, evolved with other verticals in the retail industries, the, refineries, in energy industries.
Also strong interest from investors, funds from the United States, Europe, the Middle East and Asia, including Sturgeon Capital, are looking closely at startups from across the region. Among them are projects from Astana Hub and IT Park Uzbekistan.
В Узбекистане насчитывается более чем 950 стартапов.
In Uzbekistan, there are more than 950 startups. An IT park actively supports many of them. Today, more than 9 companies are taking part here at GTEx Kazakhstan, most of them IT startups. We help them not only grow within Uzbekistan, but also expand into global markets. And for us, GTEx Kazakhstan is exactly the kind of platform that makes this possible.
GTEx Kazakhstan именно считается такой площадкой.
On the second day, the focus is shifting to more practical questions, how to move from AI strategies to real infrastructure, and how to train the specialists who will support it. The discussions cover everything from artificial intelligence and fintech to cybersecurity and smart energy, as the region looks to turn plans into real projects. Fariza Kalimurzana, Natik Mamadov, A News, Almaty.
Energy, private sector development and regional cooperation are in focus at the Asian Development Bank's annual meeting in Samarkand. Our correspondent Sevil Rajapova has the details from there.
Discussions at the Asian Development Bank's 59th annual meeting in Samarkand are centered on energy transition, investment and regional connectivity across Central Asia. Energy remains a key focus. The Asian Development Bank is scaling up investment in clean energy and regional connectivity, with a target of mobilizing $70 billion by 2035. In Uzbekistan, this includes ongoing investment in solar and wind power, as well as better energy storage systems. The country is also advancing its first nuclear power project in the Jizak region as part of its long-term energy strategy. Alongside these discussions highlighted the growing role of private sector investment in driving economic development. In 2025, total investment in Uzbekistan reached $43.1 billion, marking a 24% increase, with $38.2 billion coming from foreign direct investment. As part of broader reforms, Uzbekistan is developing the Tashkent International Financial Center alongside the Enterprise Uzbekistan Digital Hub and new Islamic finance instruments aimed at strengthening its position as a regional investment hub. The financial center alone is expected to attract up to $20 to $25 billion by 2030. Across Central Asia, investment is also accelerating, led by large-scale energy and infrastructure projects. Kazakhstan alone has attracted more than $17 billion in foreign direct investment in recent projects, while Uzbekistan continues to position itself as one of the region's fastest-growing investment destinations. Participants also underlined that improving regional connectivity in both transport and energy systems remains critical for long-term growth, particularly for landlocked economies. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Samarkand, Uzbekistan A News.
Baku is bringing together global players in agriculture, food production and hospitality as one of the region's largest industry gatherings opens its doors. Caspian Agro Week highlights new technologies, international partnerships and growing opportunities for business development.
Live machinery demonstrations, smart agri-tech solutions, food industry showcases and business meetings are taking place side by side at Caspian Agro Week.
From May 5th to May 8th, the Baku Expo Center once again takes center stage, hosting Caspian Agro Week, Interfood Azerbaijan and Horeca Caspian, the region's premier exhibitions dedicated to agriculture, the food industry and hospitality.
Today we're showcasing Belarusian producers and bringing our best, highest quality meat products to Baku. We already have strong partnerships with local retail chains, and we represent the Mogilev meat processing plant. Our goal is to expand our supply across Baku.
This year, 447 companies from 45 countries are taking part, presenting modern farming technologies, food production systems, smart agriculture solutions, packaging and hospitality innovations. Visitors can explore both indoor exhibition halls and large outdoor displays featuring advanced agricultural machinery and live demonstrations.
We help small and medium enterprises to go abroad. So that's why we decided to do an Italian pavilion here in Caspian Agro, because we believe there is a big potential here in Azerbaijan for Italian technology. We have 10 Italian companies here, and there are other 12 Italian companies in the fair, in the shop.
The program is full of activities, international forums, panel discussions, workshops and B2B meetings that bring together industry leaders, experts and entrepreneurs. Many participants are actively seeking to build new cooperation, expand partnerships and enter new markets.
We're presenting one of the world's leading brands, Homer. This German-made machine is a specialized sugar beet harvester. It gently lifts the beets from the soil, cuts the leaves, cleans them using turbines, and transfers them into the bunker, all in one process. From field to raw product, it streamlines the entire harvest efficiently. These machines are already operating in Azerbaijan with major agricultural companies, helping boost productivity and support the development of modern, innovative farming in the country.
a strong focus is placed on innovation and the Made in Azerbaijan brand. Participants on the ground highlight the importance of the event. With strong international participation and a packed business agenda, Caspian Agro Week and Interfood Azerbaijan continue to stand out as major regional platforms for innovation, trade and collaboration.
It's time for a quick break now, and when I come back I'll have a full update on the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Don't go anywhere.
Figura orgánica que la Argentina. Y empieza por plata y es para los gobiernos. Un tipo muy piola. No, money from Armenia to Russia. Group of Russian Armenians. People who are financial days, some rich Armenians, they live in Russia. Pashinyan lo puso preso. Pashinyan is not protecting the own Korea. The Armenian game is Russia. No con Pashinyan mismo, pero
que remuevan a Pashinyan.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gaza. One important note.
To this.
I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington, London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Good morning, welcome back to Daybreak. Let's see what's making the headlines at the top of the hour. President Trump announced a brief pause in the Strait of Hormuz escort mission following progress in Iran talks. Russian strikes killed at least 27 people in Ukraine just days before Moscow's planned two-day ceasefire. And Israeli strikes killed at least 3 people and wounded 9 others in Gaza despite a ceasefire. All right, let's take a look at what's making the front pages today. And we begin with Al Jazeera, who has an update on the war between Russia and Ukraine and those latest death tolls there. So 27 people have been killed and more than 80 others injured in a Russian drone and missile strike on Ukraine just hours before Kyiv's ceasefire is set to kick in. Now, this came 3 days before Moscow's planned pause in the fighting to mark Victory Day celebrations. Now, that's the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Now, we've been hearing from Zelensky, who said Russian authorities showed utter cynicism by announcing a ceasefire and then launching missile and drone attacks on the country. Now, we've also got some updates here on what's going on in Russian territory, and Ukrainian drones attacked one of Russia's biggest oil refineries, sparking a fire in an industrial area of the Russian town of Kurishi. So I'm sure more to come there on Al Jazeera. They've been updating this across the day, so keep across this for the latest developments. Now, we are going to turn and get some sports news, as it's a big night in sport tonight, as the last of the Champions League semi-finals kicks off tonight at 11 p.m. Baku time. So who's going to join Arsenal in the final in Budapest? Will it be Paris Saint-Germain or will it be Bayern Munich? Arsenal won their place yesterday after beating Atletico Madrid at the Emirates. Now, with the aggregate currently at 4 to Bayern and 5 to PSG, and Bayern playing at home, this is shaping up to be one of the best Champions League games we have seen in a long time. Last week's match was the highest scoring European Cup semi-final in over 60 years. So it's all to play for tonight, and I think it's going to make for a very exciting final over in Budapest. So who are you backing? Are you backing PSG? Are you backing Bayern Munich? Let us know on all of our social media channels. Leave a comment on our post. I'd love to know who you're supporting. Now, we are going to go to A News now and take a look at our website, as we've got a live page running on the US-Iran conflict, and here we have it. So the US declares objectives met in Iran operation as the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked. So this will be updated, of course, across the day. The US is going to be pausing Project Freedom. That's the effort aimed at guiding commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. And this announcement came just hours after Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the initial US-Israeli offensive in Iran was over after achieving its objectives, and the focus would be on Project Freedom, which has now been paused. And there'll also be updates here on what's going on in Beijing, as Iran's top diplomat is in Beijing for talks on regional and international developments with his Chinese counterpart. And this comes as Trump is preparing to travel to China himself this week. So as I say, keep across A News for updates. We're updating this hour by hour, but for now, let's go to this report for more on that story.
The Donald Trump administration has announced a temporary halt to its naval operation, helping ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz, a vital route for global oil shipments. President Trump said the mission, known as Project Freedom, would be suspended for a short period after what he called strong progress in negotiations with Iran. He added the move followed a request from Pakistan, which has been acting as an intermediary. Despite the pause, US restrictions targeting Iranian ports will remain in place. He also said on Tuesday that Iran's military strength has been heavily weakened and claimed Tehran should surrender, adding that it is too proud to admit it.
They should wave, they're very proud. Maybe you won't see a white flag, but essentially that's already what they are. They should wave the white flag of surrender. In hockey, they say, uncle, right? When are they gonna cry uncle? But And they have another expression, if this were a fight, they would stop it.
At the same time, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington favors a diplomatic solution, noting that the administration is aiming for a deal rather than further escalation. Meanwhile, Iran has responded with criticism. Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Ghalibaf said the current situation is intolerable for America, while we are only at the beginning. Iran also accused the US and its allies of putting maritime security and energy transit at risk through what he described as ceasefire violations and a continued blockade. As the situation remains tense in the Strait of Hormuz, fears of further disruption to shipping continuing to weigh on global energy markets and oil fluctuation prices.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called a new UN Security Council draft resolution on the Strait of Hormuz a test of the UN's ability to respond to global crises on Tuesday. The US-backed text demands that Iran stop attacks and mining in the key waterway after a previous resolution was vetoed by China and Russia.
I think it's a real test for the UN, right? As something that functions that can solve global problems. What is the purpose of the UN? The UN was supposed to be a place where you could peacefully resolve global conflict. Right now you have a country who is unlawfully, criminally, and illegally taking possession of an international waterway and blowing up commercial vessels and putting mines in the water. I don't know if people appreciate how outrageous this is, how unacceptable it is that any country would fire and try to sink commercial vessels or put mines in the water. Both of these things are illegal. And so we're going to take it to the UN, and we're going to give it another chance to be a forum in which we're not even asking people to commit troops to the region and help blow up the Iranian boats. All we're asking them to do is to condemn it, to call on Iran to stop blowing ships, to remove these mines, and to allow humanitarian relief to come through, because there's humanitarian aid that's trapped. That's it.
Well, let's get the latest developments in the Middle East with political analyst Aytan Gurbanova. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Now, we've just heard there from Marco Rubio, and we're hearing these competing narratives where President Trump says there's been great progress made towards a deal with Iran, but Iranian state media is saying that Trump retreated after continued failure to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So what do you make of these competing versions of events?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. And firstly, it should be noted that this confrontation isn't driven only by military calculation or economic pressure or some declarations by the leaders of the two countries. It's equally a battle of narratives and perceptions. I think that the United States of America presents itself as a guarantor of the regional stability and international order. By contrast, Iran frames its position and sovereignty as a main issue, and resistance and opposition to the external pressure is the main goal for the Iranian government. And these competing narratives shape international opinion and influence diplomatic support across different regions of the world to the two countries, to the both countries. At the same time, both sides communicate through strategic signaling, and military movements, political statements, and calibrated responses are designed to demonstrate strength and determination. So far, the danger is that such signals can easily be misread, increasing the risk of unintended escalation, and there are also unofficial but clearly understood red lines for the both sides. Neither side appears to risk direct war or a major disruption of the global energy flows. As long as these limits remain respected, I think that tensions may stay manageable. However, if those boundaries are crossed, escalation could become rapid and extremely difficult to contain.
So what about the progress towards a ceasefire then? Do you think we're any closer there?
I don't think that we are going through the period of the ceasefire. At a broader level, this is not a genuine ceasefire. It is a better understood the mechanism for managing tensions. For the United States of America, using the language of the ceasefire, it's to project stability to its allies and reassure global markets. For the Iran, meanwhile, maintains a calibrated level of the pressure to avoid appearing weak and strategically isolated. So in this situation, what we are witnessing is controlled confrontation. Both sides appear willing to tolerate a certain degree of tension as long as it doesn't escalate into full-scale war. So in many ways, this reflects a wider trend in contemporary geopolitics where states compete through limited and carefully measured actions while trying to avoid crossing critical red lines, as I mentioned before. So from this standpoint of view, the American strategy is built around balance. Washington seeks to contain escalation without becoming trapped in another large or costly regional conflict. So, however, maintaining that balance becomes increasingly difficult over time, particularly when pressure, counterattacks, or strategic signaling continue from the other side.
So how surprised were you then by this announcement from Trump pausing Project Freedom when Pete Hegseth had vowed that this operation was going to ensure freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz?
I think that the Strait of Hormuz remains central to the entire crisis. It illustrates that how geography itself can become a strategic instrument of power. Though Iran or the United States of America don't necessarily need to fully block the strait for the creating global consequences. And even uncertainty, unpredictability, or any indirect threats, limited disruptions can influence oil prices, shipping routes, and international decision-making processes, as we indicated, as we've shown in our previous couple of weeks. So in this context, energy is no longer merely an economic resource. It becomes a geopolitical tool with global implications. From a broader international perspective, the greatest challenge is uncertainty, unpredictability for the situation. The global markets can usually absorb temporary shocks, but prolonged instability creates deeper structural concerns for all sides. And this includes rising energy costs, disruptions in global trade, and declining investor confidence. As a result, the crisis moves beyond the regional security issue and becomes more global economic stability concern rather than just confrontation in the bilateral context.
And how are you by these reports from the UAE that they're engaging their air defences as missiles and drones from Iran have been reported for a second day in a row?
I think that the movement of the United Arab Emirates demonstrates that this situation is no longer confined to a bilateral confrontation, and it is gradually moving into broader regional issues. It's not just only for regarding the United Arab Emirates, it also covers all Gulf states, and history shows that many conflicts don't expand through some deliberate planning, but through miscalculation, misunderstanding, or unintended escalation. And in such a highly tense environment, even a limited incident can trigger a wider reaction. Today, the risks are particularly serious because major economic and energy hubs are involved, and critical infrastructure, shipping corridors, and energy facilities potential targets again. And this significantly increases the complexity of the crisis and makes it far more difficult to control, to keep it under the control. And simultaneously, this kind of attacks can create regional alliances. Regional pressure is likely to reshape regional alliances. At the same time, Gulf states may deepen coordination among themselves and strengthen strategic ties with global and regional actors. However, this process may also sharpen geopolitical divisions and creating long-term rivalry rather than sustainable solutions.
Very concerning indeed. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme and for providing your analysis.
Thank you.
Now, let's get the rest of the day's global news. Russian strikes have killed at least 23 people in Ukraine just days before Moscow's planned two-day ceasefire, raising doubts over whether the pause will hold.
Ukrainian officials say Russian attacks have killed dozens of people across multiple regions, hours before a proposed ceasefire was due to begin. The heaviest strike was reported in Zaporizhia, where authorities say aerial bombs and drones killed at least 12 people and injured around 20, damaging residential areas and sparking fires.
There was a cynical strike on facilities in the city of Zaporizhia with 4 guided aerial bombs. The enemy intentionally began attacking those locations with Shahed drones. For a very long time, emergency services and municipal services were unable to approach the location.
In Kramatorsk, officials say 5 people were killed and 12 injured, while in Dnipro, authorities reported between 3 and 4 deaths, with several others wounded. In the Poltava region, a strike on gas production facilities reportedly killed 4 people. Separately, officials in the northern Chernihiv region say a drone strike hit the city centre, injuring 3 people and setting an administrative building and nearby vehicles on fire. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has criticised the limited pause, saying it is not enough to halt attacks for only a short period. Russia has not commented on the latest Ukrainian claims. Meanwhile, Russian state media reported that a Ukrainian drone strike killed 2 people in the Chuvashia region. Ukraine has proposed an open-ended ceasefire starting at midnight, urging Russia to reciprocate. Moscow has announced a separate truce for May 8th and 9th, linked to World War II commemorations.
Mobile internet outages are affecting daily life in Moscow, with authorities citing security measures ahead of Victory Day celebrations.
Mobile internet outages have disrupted services across parts of Moscow, as authorities say they are tightening security ahead of Victory Day celebrations. For much of the day, residents struggled to make payments, book transport and access online services, with some businesses switching to cash.
In the morning, we've had difficulties with internet access. It made things more difficult as 90% of our citizens use bank cards. Things got better now. Of course, if we don't have internet at all, we will have to switch to cash only. However, few people pay in cash nowadays.
I
live in an area with poor transport accessibility, and I have to take a train to reach the metro. There, ticket terminals were not working at all. It was impossible to buy tickets by card or QR code, and even cash terminals were not accepting payments. There was only one staff member who was issuing tickets manually, and as a result, people were missing their trains. There was also no way to contact family members.
I download something to be prepared. There is no other way. I'm glad that there is internet in the metro when it comes to transportation, but if there is an emergency during such outages, things could get difficult. Regarding payments, cards do work at some spots as well as payment terminals, but all in all it is pretty tough, and I don't know where it will all go.
Authorities say the measures are aimed at preventing potential drone attacks, and disruptions could continue in the coming days. The restrictions come ahead of Victory Day on May 9th, Russia's main national commemoration of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II.
Thousands have filled Prague's Old Town Square on Tuesday, waving flags and holding signs reading "Hands off the media." It's a protest against government plans to change how public media is funded. The government plans to phase out licence fees this year and fund public broadcasters through the state budget from next year. Critics say the move would cut funding and increase political pressure on public media. Prime Minister Andrej Babis says independence will be preserved with governance unchanged and budgets adjusted for inflation. Gaza's death toll has passed 72,000 according to local health authorities. The latest strike killed 3 people, including a teenage boy.
Tensions remain high in the Middle East as Israel continues its operations in Gaza. The Palestinian death toll has now reached 72,615, according to health authorities in the territory. More than 172,000 people have been injured since the conflict between Hamas and Israel began on October the 7th, 2023. Officials say at least 3 people were killed and 9 others wounded in the past 24 hours. Among the latest incidents was an Israeli strike on a police station in Gaza City on May 5th, where a 15-year-old boy was killed and several others were injured.
He sells bread to feed his siblings. He has 15 people to feed. Nobody feels for us. If we go hungry, if we die, if we are killed, nobody feels. What did this child do to deserve being hit while selling bread?
We suddenly heard a blast. I ran outside and found the police station had been hit. I looked and saw people lying on the ground, martyrs and wounded. I started moving and putting them in the car. We came here with a martyr. When will the war stop?
Earlier the same day, other Israeli strikes killed at least 2 more Palestinians, according to local health officials. There has been no immediate comment from Israel on the incidents. Israel has intensified strikes on Gaza's police force, saying it is used by Hamas to maintain control. Violence has continued almost daily despite the ceasefire, with both sides accusing each other of violations. According to Gaza's health authorities, more than 800 Palestinians have been killed and over 2,300 injured since the truce took effect in October 2025.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the current situation in Cuba is unacceptable, adding that Washington plans to address it while also expressing readiness to expand humanitarian aid to the country.
The only thing worse than a communist is an incompetent one. And that's what, so incompetent communists run that country. They don't know how to fix it. They really don't. And we have 90 miles from our shores a failed state that also happens to be friendly territory for some of our adversaries. So it's an unacceptable status quo, and we'll be addressing it, but not today. Okay. All right, let's go.
A fire at a shopping centre west of Tehran has killed at least 8 people on Tuesday. Iranian state TV said 36 others were injured in the blast. Officials said materials used on the building's facade helped the flames spread quickly. 7 rescue teams and search dogs were sent to the scene while the cause remains unknown. You're watching Daybreak on A News. We're going to go to a quick break now, but stay with us for more of the global stories.
Unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenging.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gaza. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv, Washington, London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back, you're watching Daybreak. Let's get more of the global stories as EU finance ministers have met in Brussels for key talks on tackling fraud, boosting support for Ukraine and strengthening the European Union's financial system amid wider concerns over economic security. Here's more for our correspondent.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where EU finance ministers focus on fighting fraud, scaling up support for Ukraine, and pushing ahead with plans to strengthen Europe's financial system. At the two-day Economic and Financial Affairs Council meeting in Brussels, ministers agreed to new rules to crack down on VAT fraud. Investigators from the European Public Prosecutor's Office and the EU's Anti-Fraud Agency will get direct access to cross-border VAT data to target organized crime and close costly loopholes. On Ukraine, they reviewed the economic and financial impact of Russia's aggression and progress on the €90 billion EU loan package agreed by the European Council last December and for which the legislative framework was finalized 2 weeks ago. The funds will be raised through EU borrowing and backed by the EU budget, with repayment expected from future Russian reparations. Ministers also debated the next steps in building a savings and investments union designed to deepen capital markets, remove barriers to cross-border investment, and unlock private funding to boost competitiveness. But even as Brussels pushes to deepen capital markets, there's growing concern the banks meant to power that system may simply be too small to compete globally, partly due to protectionism by member states with respect to mergers and acquisitions of systemically important banks. The group's chairman warned Europe's banking sector is still fragmented and lacks the scale of rivals in the US and China. He called for greater integration and more cross-border consolidation. As Europe cracks down on VAT fraud, funds Ukraine, and tries to mobilize capital, it must build financial scale quickly or risk falling behind in the global race for economic power. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
And finally, this morning, World Cup fever is spreading across the world, in our region too, as Uzbekistan is set to make their debut, but no more than in Rio, when artists and volunteers in Rio de Janeiro's Racinha Favela worked overnight to create a street mural ahead of the World Cup, continuing a long-standing Brazilian tradition. Teams began marking out the design from midnight, with volunteers given until late afternoon to complete the artwork in Brazil's national colours of yellow, green and blue. Across the country, neighbourhoods like Vila Isabel are also preparing for the tournament by decorating streets in support of the national team. Not long to go now. That's all we have time for this morning. Thank you for watching Daybreak. I'll be back tomorrow with all of your global and regional stories. Thank you for watching.